Well, hello and welcome. Today I'm going to take you around the body graph, and I'm going to just explain all 9 centers. And I'm going to leave out all the blah blah, the juxtaposition and decrements and tones and colors and bases. Too many people get lost in that. And it's more important to understand the 9 centers. And again, it's even more important to actually realize and be aware of the not self of those 9 centers. So let's take a little trip around the body graph. So, as you can see, that I've got the not self on the top there, and on the bottom right, the 9 centers. And of course, they are divided into, I guess, different functions, to say the least. And I've gone through a few of those in the past. But I'm going to just refresh everybody's memory. So we have 2 pressure centers. The pressure center of the head, so that pressure is the pressure of a concept. And then on the bottom of the body graph, we have the root, and it's the pressure. The pressure center is the adrenaline. Now we have 4 motors. We have the root center. We have the sacral center. So if you're a generator, that's going to be colored in. We have the ego, or the heart center, and we have the solar plex, or the emotional center. Now the solar plex, it's a motor, it's awareness center, and it's in transition. It's mutating, and that mutation will take effect in a year and a half, actually, 2027. Then we have the awareness centers. We have the spleen, the oldest awareness center. We have the ajna, and we have the solar plex. Again, as you can see, they're both. It's solar plex is both a motor and an awareness center. Then we got the expression center of the throat, and in following broadcasts, I'm going to talk about the throat because it's quite interesting. And we'll discuss that at another time. And then we have the identity center, the G center, or actually the magnetic monopole. So let's start on the top. 70% of humanity has an open head. And again, I'm going to go through the not self themes. So if you're troubled by something, something's bothering you, if this not self themes are reoccurring in your life, and you've got into human design, you have to start surrendering to the fact that you have to follow your strategy and authority. But it's really important to understand what's actually happening. So the head center, the not self theme, trying to answer everybody's questions. Now, it's a hard concept to relay, I guess, because 70% of humanity, myself included, we spent all of our time trying to answer questions that have nothing to do with us. And when you step back and start thinking about it and looking back, yeah, it's absolutely. So what can you do about it? You can't do much about it. You just have to basically be aware of it. Again, our not self is the spokesperson for all our centers. Then we have the Ajna Center. The Ajna Center's non-self theme is mental certainty. I want to be mentally certain, or try to be mentally certain. So again, so many people, 50 50% of the population is trying to be mentally certain. And my example, mentally certain, is I remember as a child, and the teacher would ask a question and my hand would fly up. Two different reasons, right? Projector, look at me, recognize me. And I was trying to be mentally certain with the rest of the class. And I would answer a question and it would be wrong and I would be devastated. That's the biggest fear of the open ajna, is not knowing the answer. And it could be quite embarrassing. So let's continue downwards to the throat center. And that's the expression center. That's where manifestation can come from, verbal manifestation. And the not self theme of the open throat is, am I trying to attract attention? And it's a big one. And I've witnessed that. My son has an open throat. And for the first, I'm going to say 13 years, everybody thought my son couldn't speak, or he spoke very little. And now I realize he was actually unwittingly living out his design. So that open throat, again, linked to the thyroids. And Roth always said that when you put a lot of stress on that open throat, you're going to end up with thyroid problems. So be aware of that. Now, going downwards again now to the identity center, the magnetic monopole, the thing that keeps us in our trajectory. I love saying that word. And the not self theme of that is looking for love and direction, longing for love and direction, trying to have that feeling of love and direction. So it's important to feel that, and when you have that open center and you're feeling unloved or you feeling of no direction, this is where the mind pops up and starts making decisions for you, and you act on those decisions. Now, right below that, that's the sacral center. That's the energy hub. That's where all the action is. This is where the generators generate what we see. Without the generators, none of us would be around. And the not self theme of the sacral is never knowing when enough is enough. Now, I can speak fully on this subject. I'm an emotional projector, and my whole life I struggled with when enough is enough. It's a huge issue, and if you're not defined with that, start being aware. And when I'm in the aura of generators, it's abundantly clear that I don't know when enough is enough. But when I'm sitting with the right generator who's operating correctly, I can feed off of their enoughness, if that makes any sense. Now at the bottom, we talked about the root center. I've spoken about the root center. That's actually a very underrated center. Most people just kind of bypass that. And it's important to understand this is our adrenaline. This gives us the fuel to move forward. The not self theme of the root is to relieve the pressure as fast as you can. No different than the head. The head is a pressure center also, but that pressure is mental concept. And that mental concept, to try to answer people's question, it drives it down to the ajna, where the ajna conceptualizes it. And then it pushes it down to the throat, where the throat actually expresses what's coming out of the ajna. Now with the root, again, I've got an open root, so I know exactly what that pressure feels like. It and I've learned now that that there are times when you need to be quick, and there are times where you need to just take your time. And as being an emotional individual, also taking your time or having patience is a tough thing for me. Alrighty, so that's the root. Now let's go to the left side of the body graph, and that is an awareness center. That is your spleen. And let's not forget what the spleen actually is. It's the fear center. This is where all our knowledge comes from. All knowledge is arrived from fear. And that fear, we got to understand, that is the fear of survival, keeping ourselves alive. And we built strategies around that. And I'm not going to speak too much about that. So, the not self strategy of the open spleen is to hang on to anything that's not good for you. Now, that's another issue, and that's another tough nut to swallow. And Rob had a really good example of the spleen, and the person with he called it the washing machine. And the person with the divine washing machine has their washing machine going, and it's doing its business. And I come into the aura, and immediately my open spleen is looking for some place to plug in. And it plugs into that divine spleen, and all of a sudden my washing machine starts working, and I feel good. Now again, we got to remember all the decision making comes from all the other the other 8 centers, and it's not as well. I'm going to say it is easy, but it's more important to understand where that decision actually comes from. So, the wisdom coming out of that open center is you start learning that there's some people that makes you feel good but are not good for you. And again, I've got several examples of that in my life. But again, that's for another time. Now let's move over to the right side of the body graph, the solar plex, the organ or the center, I should say, that is in mutation. And I will do another broadcast about that mutative force that is coming. And it's I have got no idea actually what it really is about, other than what I've read. So the not self theme of the open solar plex: to avoid conflict in truth at all cost. And now truth isn't lying in a sense, telling fibs. It's lying to yourself in actually how you feel. Huge difference. The avoidance part is basically you don't want to rock the boat. And if you come from an emotional family, if your children or your spouse is emotional and you're not emotional, you remember, you are going to amplify their emotions. You will think that you're emotionally out of control. But, in reality, it's secondhand emotions. There's nothing you can do about it other than say, wow, this isn't mine. I'm leaving this space. It's a big one. So avoiding conflict and truth. Now you can see how that plays in with your spleen, your sacral, to make a decision. And finally, let's go to the ego, the heart center. 70% of the population have an open heart center. The not self theme of the open heart center is not feeling worthy. So you can imagine 70% of this globe do not feel worthy. And they try to prove their worth by making decisions. And those decisions, again, are coming out of our mind. The not self spokesperson for those open centers is the mind. So if you have an open center, more than likely you do. The biggest thing you got to remember is you don't have to prove yourself. Now, if you have an open ego and you have an open G, it's extremely tough. Now you're trying to prove that you're worthy of love and direction. And you start feeling good with the wrong people because it activates your open spleen. And you can see how the circle starts becoming the circle, which is mechanically operating. So what does this all boil down to? It boils down to you. Look at your graph, and 70% of you will be generators. You're here to understand yourself. Don't get lost in the gates, the channels, the lines, the colors, the tones, the bases. Study the graph. Study your chart. Understand your open centers. Your defined centers are imprinted. A reliable place to go. Your open centers is where your wisdom will develop. And over time, you will see how much wisdom actually is in those open centers. Unlike the defined centers, they are defined. Not much going to happen there. There are no updates. So if you're having troubles with those open centers, remember, knowing this knowledge is not going to fix that. It's not going to, how do you put it? It's not going to save you. What's going to give you peace of mind is the knowing that this is the mechanics, there's nothing wrong with you, and you just have to sit back and be the passenger. And when that happens, the magic happens. And it reminds me of being a child and walking in the streets and in the rain and watching the water go down the gutters. And I remember always when I would see a blockage in the water building up, it was so satisfying to open that blockage and watch that water flow. And that's what you do when you surrender to the fact that you are the passenger. There is no control. And that brings a quiet solitude. Now, I'm not sure how you generators feel about that. Manifestors, I know you're going, out, whatever. The reflector's not even watching because they're doing their own thing. And if you're a projector and you're tuning in, you're going, oh, well, cool. I'm going to have to look for that in the graph, that in the graph. Because remember, us projectors, we're here to know the other. And the more we know the other, the more we see ourselves in the other. And again, I can speak on that. I've seen it, I've witnessed it, I've seen the mechanics in play. And my experiment is up to this point, over 7 years now, 100% verified. My experiment. And it's the distinction. Remember, we are all here as a unique individual. And that's the beauty of it. To actually know there is nobody else like you. Period. And we've been conditioned to believe that we need to be like everybody else. And that is the demise of the whole illusion. That somehow we're all connected. But it's a unique experience. We're all flying through space, absolutely. So remember, human design is, for most intensive purpose, is a knowledge you need to apply, period. And not on Fridays and Saturdays or when you get off of work. It needs to be applied continuously. You need to live out your design and your strategy and authority. Otherwise, it's another modality. It's another system your mind's going to use to convince you that your not self isn't that bad. So that's like sitting in the back seat as the passenger and whispering instead of yelling at the driver which way to go. Enjoy your movie. Enjoy your trip. Don't interfere. Let life come to you. Generators, respond. Manifestors, please inform. Projectors, trust me, you're not missing anything. Wait for the invitation. You are not missing anything. Go about your life, do what you love, and be ready for that invitation. Too many of us don't even see it when it's there. And reflectors, enjoy it. And just enjoy being the mirror of all of this. It must be quite a cool thing. And if there are any projectors that are listening to this broadcast or see it in the replays, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear a comment, and I would love to hear your perspective on how your experiment in the reflector world goes. And of course, that goes for the generator, projector, and the manifestor, of course. If you have questions, if you have something to share within your experiment, something that might help others understand a part of human design, because again, wow, there's a lot, it's mind candy. There's a lot to know if you want to know it all. For me, I'm a 2-4. It works, and I don't care, and I love it. So, with that being said, sit back, put your feet up, make some popcorn, watch the movie. Follow your strategy and authority, and most importantly, love yourself. Till next time.